He looked like just another quiet old man, standing alone at the shooting range. Nobody paid him any attention until a young Navy SEAL recruit spotted something on his arm. A faded tattoo, one that changed everything. Asterisk, the sun was barely up. The sky was soft and pale, not yet warmed by the light. At the far end of the range, where no one liked to stand, an old man slowly unpacked his things. No one noticed him at first. Not really. He moved too quietly, dressed too plainly. Just a faded flannel shirt, worn jeans, and boots that had clearly seen better days. His gray cap was pulled down low, his face hidden in shadow. Most mornings, this place buzzed with energy. Young men lined up, showing off their skills. Conversations full of bravado. Laughter sharp, loud, careless. Not today. Not since he showed up. One by one, the others grew quieter. They watched without watching, whispered without meaning to. Something about him made them uneasy. Not fear. Not exactly. Something harder to name. Near the benches, a young SEAL recruit leaned on his rifle. His friends chuckled under their breath, pointing. Old guys like that shouldn't be out here. Waste of ammo. But the recruit didn't laugh. His eyes stayed locked on the old man's hands. Steady. Slow. Like this wasn't practice. Like it was something else. Something older. The old man set down his case. Opened it with care. Inside, a rifle. Not fancy. Not polished. Worn smooth by time and use. He checked it over the way a man might check an old friend. No rush. No doubt. The recruit shifted. His throat dry. His heart ticking faster. Something about the way the man moved. It felt familiar. Like muscle memory passed down. Like a ghost. From a different generation, the old man raised his arm. Took aim. Not a sound, but the soft breath he let go. Then, the shot. Asterisk, the shot cracked through the still air. Not rushed. Not loud. Just clean. Sharp. Precise. The kind of shot that didn't need explanation. The old man didn't react. No head tilt to admire his aim. No glance to see who was watching. He simply lowered the rifle, reset his stance, and loaded again. Slow. Careful. Like every movement mattered. Like this wasn't just about hitting a target. Across the range, the young SEAL recruit leaned forward without realizing. His friends were quieter now. No more jokes. No more whispers. Something felt different in the air. He couldn't quite explain it. That shot wasn't luck. It wasn't casual skill. It came from somewhere deeper. Somewhere trained. Somewhere lived. He watched the old man adjust the rifle's sights with fingers that didn't shake. Not even a little. The kind of fingers that had done this 1,000 times before. Maybe more. The recruit's own hands, still fresh to this. Life tightened on his gear. He caught sight of something then. Just for a moment. When the old man rolled his sleeve back slightly to wipe the sweat from his wrist. A mark. Faded. Old ink. Worn soft by age and sun. Not just any tattoo. Not something picked from a book or done on a dare. The recruit's breath caught in his chest. He knew that mark. Not from stories. Not from rumors. From history. From respect. From the kind of men who carried it into the darkest places on earth and never spoke of it again. That he didn't say a word. Not yet. Just watched as the old man lifted the rifle once more. Slow. Steady. A ghost in the light of morning. Another shot fired. Another target gone. Asterisk, the recruit couldn't look away now. His friends kept watching too, but none of them understood what he was seeing. They just thought it was odd. An old man with good aim. Nothing more. But the recruit knew better. His heart beat slower, heavier, as if his body understood something before his mind could catch up. That tattoo wasn't just old ink. It wasn't decoration. It was a symbol. A mark earned, not given. A badge from a time when men didn't speak of their deeds, only carried them in silence. The recruit had seen pictures in books, heard whispers in training. Some called it the ghost trident. Fewer still had ever met a man who bore it. He stepped forward without thinking. Not rushed. Not bold. Just pulled by something quiet inside. His boots crunched against the gravel, drawing the old man's eyes for the first time. They were pale blue, those eyes. Tired, but not weak. Watchful. Measured. The recruit swallowed hard. His voice felt small. Sir, that tattoo. Team 2. Wasn't it? The old man said nothing. His gaze held steady. His lips pressed into something almost like a smile, but not quite. It was something harder. Something deeper. A slow nod. That's all. The recruit straightened without realizing. His back stiffened. His chin lifted. Every lesson drilled into him about respect, about history, about those who came before. It burned in his chest now. The others didn't get it. They just looked on, confused. To them, he was still just an old man with a rifle. To the recruit, he was something else. Entirely. A living reminder of why he wore his own uniform. The old man turned back to his rifle. Loaded one more round. Asterisk this time. The recruit didn't return to his bench. He stayed where he was, standing just a few feet behind the old man. Watching closely. Watching the way his shoulders settled into place. The way his breath moved steady and slow, like he'd done this a million times before, and no one else spoke. Not now. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The old man squeezed the trigger. Another shot rang out, clean and true. The target flipped back. Dead center again. The recruit found himself nodding, though the old man wasn't looking. He understood. Something now, something deeper than ranks or orders. This man didn't need to prove himself. Not to anyone. He'd already done it, long ago, in places no one would ever know. I didn't think anyone from Team 2 was still. The recruit caught himself. Swallowed the rest. It wasn't his place to finish that sentence. The old man gave him a look. Then, not unkind, not sharp, just steady, like a teacher watching a student figure something out. Like he'd heard that question too many times to answer it anymore. He handed the rifle to the recruit. Just like that. No words. No instructions. The weight surprised him. Not just the rifle itself, but what it meant. The recruit took his place, settled his breath, did everything just as he'd been taught. Point one shot that IT missed. Not by much, but enough. Behind him, the old man chuckled. Quiet, but real. You'll get there, he said at last. The recruit smiled. For the first time, the others around them seemed to understand. Not because of the shot, but because of the silence that followed. A silence, full of respect, full of something more. Asterisk. The old man took the rifle back, his hands steady as ever. He didn't rush. He checked the sights again, though they hadn't moved. It wasn't about the rifle. It was about routine, discipline, respect for the craft. The recruit watched every small movement like it was a lesson he didn't want to forget. Without a word, the old man loaded another round. Raised the rifle. Held it steady. Another shot, another perfect mark. It seemed almost too easy for him. Like muscle memory wrapped in decades of experience. The others at the range started to pay attention now. One by one, they lowered their own rifles. Not to mock, not to stare, just to watch. Because something told them this wasn't just about shooting targets anymore. The recruit felt it too. This wasn't about aim. It wasn't about the rifle. It was about who this man was. What he'd carried. What he still carried. Not on his back, but inside. In every careful step. In every slow breath, he finally spoke again, his voice softer. Now, you still practice? The old man gave a small nod. Every week. Why? A pause. The old man's gaze didn't move from the target. Because one day, someone might need me to remember. The recruit felt those words land deep. Not flashy, not loud, just true. Another shot. Another target down. The old man lowered the rifle, glanced at the recruit. You'll learn. Not everything's in the manual. The recruit gave a quiet nod. He understood now. This man wasn't here to impress anyone. He wasn't here to prove anything. He was here because this was who he was. And some things, once earned, never fade. The old man picked up his spent shells and tucked them neatly into his bag. Every movement had a rhythm, like a song only he could hear. The recruit watched, still standing nearby, feeling the weight of the moment settle in his chest. There was no applause, no handshake, no big conversation. Just respect. Silent, steady, understood without words. Point one of the other shooters, a younger guy with loud opinions, finally broke the silence. Who is he? He whispered to the recruit, as if afraid the old man might hear. The recruit didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure words could explain it. Not fully. Not to someone who hadn't noticed the tattoo, who hadn't felt the shift in the air when the old man first raised his rifle. Someone who's already done what we're training to do, he said at last. Someone who's still sharper than will probably ever be. The younger guy didn't laugh, didn't argue, just nodded, his gaze lowering with a kind of quiet respect he hadn't shown before. The old man gave one last glance down the range, as if checking for ghosts. Then he turned to leave, his steps slow but certain. The recruit watched him go, wondering where he went after this. wondering what stories he carried that he'd never tell, that he didn't follow, didn't call out, just watched. The others went back to their shooting, but not with the same loud energy. Something had shifted in them too. The recruit stayed a little longer, fired a few rounds, tried to steady his breath the way the old man had. Slow, calm, certain that he didn't need to hit the center every time. Not yet, but he understood now why it mattered to try. The range emptied out slowly. One by one, the others packed up their gear and left. Their laughter was quieter now, their steps softer. The recruit stayed behind, taking his time, reloading, aiming, shooting. Not for score, not for praise, just for the practice. Just to feel the weight of it in his hands. That he thought about the old man's words. About how some things don't come from manuals or speeches. How experience leaves its own kind of mark, deeper than ink, harder than scars. He thought about that tattoo. Faded, worn, but still there. A sign of something earned long before any of them had picked up a rifle. Another shot fired. A little closer to center this time. That he imagined the old man doing this same thing years ago. Somewhere hotter, somewhere louder, somewhere far less forgiving. A younger man then, maybe with teammates at his side, maybe alone. That tattoo hadn't been just for show back then. It had been a promise, a responsibility, a bond with men who probably never made it home. The recruit lowered his rifle, listened to the empty range, to the wind moving quiet through the trees. That it wasn't about hitting every target. It wasn't even about being the best. It was about being ready, about carrying forward the weight of what others had already carried so far. He cleaned his rifle slow, careful, just like the old man had. Packed up his gear without hurry. When he left, he glanced down the long stretch of the range one last time. The targets stood silent, still, waiting, somewhere beyond them. He thought that old man was already gone, already moving on to wherever men like him go when the day's work is done. The recruit walked to his car without speaking to anyone. His gear felt heavier than usual, though nothing had changed. His steps slower, though no one was watching. He paused before getting in, looking back toward the empty range. The sun was higher now, casting longer shadows across the targets. The old man was gone, but somehow his presence still lingered in the silence. He thought again about that small nod, about those words. One day, someone might need me to remember. They weren't just about shooting. They weren't even about war. They were about readiness, about responsibility, about carrying forward something larger than yourself. As he sat behind the wheel, he realized he didn't know the old man's name, didn't know his rank, didn't know his story, but none of that mattered. He'd seen enough to understand what kind of man he was, enough to know what kind of man he wanted to become. The recruit drove off slow, his eyes catching the rearview mirror. The range grew smaller behind him, shrinking into the distance until it disappeared. But the feeling didn't fade. Later that night, while cleaning his rifle again, his fingers moved slower, more careful, respectful, not just of the weapon, of the history behind it, of the men who had carried it before him. He thought about the tattoos he'd seen in his unit, the fresh ones, clean and sharp, and how one day they too would fade, not from weakness, but from time, from living, from surviving. He didn't need to ask questions. Not anymore. He knew the answers now. Some men walk quietly through the world, carrying more than anyone can see. And those are the men you watch, the ones you remember,